How's everybody doing? It's a great conference, isn't it? I love to be with freedom-minded folks, especially when I'm so close to Seattle. It's refreshing to come out here. So it really is great to be with all you heteronormative, thank you, Duke Pesta, you heteronormative, pro-gun, pro-life, Bible-thumping constitutionalists. It really is. I think that covers their list, doesn't it? So I do want to say something to our great friends in Poland. So 1683, at the Battle of Vienna, there was Jan Sobieski, the great king of Poland. There were people from what is present-day Hungary, present-day Austria, present-day Czech Republic, present-day Northern Italy. And that coalition has come together once again with one addition, the patriots in the United States of America who are allied with you in the defense of Christendom and the defense of liberty. So thank you very much. We stand with you gladly. Insanity continues until it hits a brick wall of reality. And the John Birch Society is that brick wall of reality. And believe me, when I say insanity, I really mean it because we have Seattle. Just remember that throughout my entire presentation, okay? I have seen a lot of organizations come and go, but an organization that can stand the test of time, last 60 years without being infiltrated, without compromising principle, that is the organization that you want to belong to. That is the organization that you want to belong to. And I also want to say, too, something else, that when I first got in the legislature, sometimes it feels a little bit lonely. I don't know if you all have ever experienced something similar as activists, but here's the thing. I want you to understand this. It has always been a very small group of patriots that have kept that little candle of freedom and liberty burning for the next generation. And I'm just honored to be here with you all today. I want to talk a little bit about the ground rules. This is because they're recording it today, and I'm going to name some names, which I always like doing, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So let's talk about the bad. First of all, spiritual apathy in America today. We also have the communists, the Muslim brotherhoods in the fifth column, otherwise known as the globalists, all right? And I'll get to that here in a second. So let's talk about spiritual apathy nationally. Born-again Christians is now only 35% of the country. We got to change that, don't we? I want to show you one other one that's very telling as well. These all come from Barna. 75% say, hey, we believe in prayer. We're praying. But look at how many are actually going out and acting. That is spiritual apathy. It's one thing to pray, but like Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, you can't just be silent. You actually have to go out and confront evil. That's an active thing that we need to do. We have a red-green axis nationally that I want to highlight, and some of you have seen this quote from Antonio Gramsci: socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity, and the New Order socialism. See, they were talking about the New Order back then, okay? This isn't a new thing. In the New Order, socialism will triumph by first capturing the culture via infiltration of schools, university, churches, and the media by transforming the consciousness of society. And then only a coalition of Islamists and Marxists can destroy the United States. Carlos the Jackal. Those are two clear statements about what we're up against. Now, I want to caveat that by saying we all know that the Muslim Brotherhood, that the Marxists, those are all tools of the globalists, right? Communists nationally. You'll notice one area of the country, my area of the country, in eastern Washington, North Idaho, western Montana, parts of the Dakotas, has the least number of communist groups in the entire country. If you want to know where we could focus effort to expand the society, it is that area of the country. We are already acting according to principles of freedom in a lot of those places. Here is some pictures from downtown Seattle and also from Olympia on the Capitol steps. They actually unfurled the communist flag on the steps of the Capitol during the March for Life rally on January 22nd. There it is. Now, when I broke out my camera and started taking pictures, guess what went away really quickly? Right. Nobody gives you power, you just take it. Seattle Antifa action right there, okay, in their own words. So what do they really want to do? This comes from the deep green resistance. Civil disobedience, mutiny, and insubordination. Does that not quantify the deep state under the Trump administration right now? But then also on the other side, violence against humans and property. Does that not quantify some of the things we're seeing, at least on the streets in Seattle and the streets of Portland? Let's talk about the Muslim Brotherhood nationally. You'll see that our area of the country has the least number of mosques. It's a pretty startling map, isn't it? I want to talk about something as well, just so I'm very clear. This was already tried in a court of law. The Holy Land Foundation trial, it was established as a matter of fact in law that the North American Islamic Trust was the bank of the Muslim Brotherhood internationally. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood spawned Hamas, which is a terrorist organization that's recognized worldwide. But I want you to understand something. This isn't something that is on the East Coast or something in Texas or something. It is in our backyard. The North American Islamic Trust, to give you an example, owns the mosque in Spokane Valley, Washington. This is in our backyard. And I think we all need to recognize that, and hopefully that motivates us to action. Here is what they believe in. We all know what the Marxists want. Let's read what the Muslim Brotherhood wants. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. And then read this down below. They want to destroy America through a grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization. Not just America, the Western civilization from within, and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands, our hands, and the hands of the believers. So how does this all tie together? Well, you don't have to read this graph, but you just need to know that that very top box that's up there, right there, that's George Soros, okay? And those are all the other organizations that are connected to it, which I just went through some of their incarnations locally. Here's also how they're linked locally. He funds a lot of peace, justice, action leagues around the country and around the world, actually. And in Spokane, in 2016, you'll notice that they had Arslan Bukhari, who's a member of CARE, and for those of you that don't know, CARE in the United States is Hamas. That was proven in the Holy Land Foundation trial and upheld by a 3-judge appellate court. You'll notice he's there, and you'll notice also that one of our local newspaper people was there as well. He's actually one of the reporters, this guy right here, Sean Vestal. He's one of the reporters for the Spokesman Review. You'll also notice their keynote speaker in 2015, Judith LeBlanc. Does anybody know who that is? That's a leader of the Communist Party USA. It's in our backyards. And most of you could find this in your area as well. Let's talk about, again, the fifth column locally. That statue of Vladimir Lenin is what is sitting in downtown Seattle right now. Now, I want to share a story very quickly. My wife is a hero in my eyes. Her family survived Soviet communism. They were part of the church that remained the confessing church in the former Soviet Union. In 1963, they split from what they called the state church, or the ones that were infiltrated by the communists. And members of her family were put in work camps. Her dad's best friend was sent to the Gulag, actually written about by Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the book A Day in the Life of Ivan Desanovich. But Kharkov, Ukraine was celebrating its independence, and they had a gigantic statue of Vladimir Lenin in their square. And in the most recent iteration of an attempt at freedom there in Ukraine, they tore that statue down. And in its place, they put up a cross. Wow. Now in America, we're tearing down our crosses and putting up a statue of Vladimir Lenin. Think about that. It's unbelievable. So I want to talk a little bit, too, about some of the people that come against us. This is just one group, one indivisible associated group in Northeast Washington. Hillary Ohm, that's a post of the U.S. Democratic Socialists. You'll also notice another down there, M.D. Lauder, who was a federal informant for the FBI. Okay? These groups are working in tandem a lot of times, and we need to understand that. You will have the deep state working at the local level. This isn't just a national thing, and I think we get tied up with that. Let's talk now, because I've talked about the problems, let's talk about the good. I like talking about solutions, don't you? All right, let's talk about a couple things. The first is identifying regions of freedom. It was interesting, I don't normally quote the New York Times, but they actually had this as an article, and in their article they talked about the fact that it's not a city-country issue. It's a culture, beliefs, heritage, traditions issue. It's hard for us in America to kind of grasp that. In Europe, it's easy to grasp that because it's been so long-standing. But they actually did this study by county in America, and I just want to show it to you, where regions of freedom are. You'll see the far west and then this kind of blurred out part on the left coast are two separate, distinct cultures, traditions, and heritage. And the way that they explained that was that Greater Appalachia was settled by the Scots-Irish, who had a profound sense of freedom because they had fled British tyranny before the Revolutionary War in a lot of cases. They then talked about the fact that on the left coast you had New Englanders who kept the values, traditions, and cultures of New England and brought it around on ships to the left coast. That was their conclusion. This is the New York Times. Remember this, okay? And then they talked about all the people that came across the West, that gigantic portion of the United States. All those people came across the West that fled typically from Ireland, Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, because they loved freedom. That's why they came west. And that's how they voted in the election for Donald Trump. Almost exactly by county. Is that not amazing? You want to talk about where we can hit first to gather strength for our movement of liberty? It is in those areas right there. It's amazing. Let's also talk about constitutionalist regions that were predicted. There's a book called When the Almond Tree Blossoms by David Aikman. And in that book, in 1992, he tried to predict what the United States would look like in 20 years, so 2012. Okay. Here are one of his predictions. He predicted that there would be social unrest in a place called St. Louis, Missouri that would break out. 1992, he wrote this. But he also used the word constitutionalist. And where did he believe constitutionalists were going to be? He believed that they were going to be here in the western United States. You can see it there, and then also over here in Appalachia, which matches that map that I just showed you again. Pretty amazing. Let's also talk about where the most intelligently literate people are. I love putting this map up, especially when there's people in the audience that are from Seattle, because they actually aren't the most intelligently literate. We are. They actually track this. The U.S. tracks this. So, again, just to reiterate, where do we already have people that understand this, but they're looking for the truth? Let's talk about reclaiming our identity. I'm going to go through some quotes here because I think it's important. We remember we are a Christian nation. We are a constitutionalist nation. And we reclaim our identity in a lot of things. We're going to solve a lot of other problems. Whereas we all came, not some, we all came into these parts of America with one and the same aim, to advance the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ and to enjoy the gospel in purity with peace. 1643, the first Articles of Confederation of the United Colonies that many of you have never even heard of. That's our identity. That's a cross, by the way, above Colville, Washington. But here's some other proof. Blackstone talked about the laws of nature and nature's God, and he actually defined it. The laws of nature's God being Scripture, the laws of nature being the truth that God wrote into creation. It was that simple. That's why they included it in the Declaration of Independence. It was a legal term because Blackstone, remember, wrote this 1765 to 1769, so 7 years later, they included it in there for that exact reason. So some people questioned this, even into the 1850s, and it's interesting if you take that timing with when Karl Marx wrote, it was already starting to impact the United States of America in the 1850s. And so they actually had a congressional investigation. The 33rd Congress took this up as a question: is America a Christian nation? And they came out with a congressional report, and it said, we are a Christian people in 1853. And then in 1854, the House came out and said, had the people during the Revolution had a suspicion of any attempt to war against Christianity, the Revolution would have been strangled in its cradle. That's pretty clear stuff, isn't it? But then people still tried to question this into the 1890s. So there was a United States Supreme Court case on this exact question: is the United States a Christian nation? This is really interesting. Holy Trinity versus U.S. This was their finding of fact and law. Quote, this is a Christian nation. That is our identity, folks. It is. That's what we're fighting for. And we need to be unashamed about this when it happens in the media and it happens in our hometowns. When people try to take this away from us, we cannot cede that ground anymore. I think we also need to unashamedly recognize something that was recognized by another country, and I'll get to who that is here in a second. One of the things we were asked to look into, so this was an official study by this country. One of the things we were asked to look into is what accounted for the success, in fact, the preeminence of the West all over the world. We studied everything we could from the historical, political, economic, and cultural perspective. At first, we thought it was because you had more powerful guns than we had. Then we thought it was because you had the best political system. Next, we focused on your economic system. But in the past 20 years, we have realized that the heart of your culture is your religion, Christianity. That is why the West has been so powerful. The Christian moral foundation of social and cultural life was what made possible the emergence of capitalism. We don't have any doubt about this. The atheist, communist, Chinese from downtown Beijing, even our enemies understand what made America great. Let's talk about a new idea as a solution. Splitting states. Actually, Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution puts it in there as an option to split states. The Founding Fathers understood that eventually we were going to become so stacked and packed like Europe, as Thomas Jefferson said, that we would need the option to split a state so we could better represent the values, traditions, and cultures of a people in that state. It only takes a simple majority vote of the state house, state senate, Congress at the federal level, and the U.S. Senate as well. That's it. But here's the great part about that. Even if it doesn't happen, you get to begin to talk about what liberty actually should look like. And believe me, when you talk to people about what liberty should look like, you talk about what our economy should actually look like, you talk about government being removed from most things, you talk about reprioritizing, you talk about no more regional governance, no more Agenda 21, no more of the garbage that we're seeing. All of a sudden, people are talking about freedom in an offensive sense instead of in a defensive, reactive sense. And that has changed, at least for us in Washington State, and I'll get to that here in a second, and reinvigorated our fight in Washington State because people are saying, hey, I want that vision. And at the end of a lot of talks, I'll have people close their eyes and I'll say, hey, remember back to when you were a kid. Remember that America. Do it right now if you want. Remember back to when you were a kid. I don't know about you, but I remember my dad had me out in the woods running along the top of logs at 6 years old, because that's all I could do, with a little 18-inch doweling and some yellow marking chalk, marking the logs so the guys behind us could cut them with chainsaws. That'd probably be child abuse today. You kidding me? But by the same token, it taught me hard work, got me outside, no video games, you know. What's keeping us from that America? We can reclaim it if we want to. It's still there. It's still there. We just need to do it. Also, imagery. This is some of the imagery we're using, splitting states, and you'll notice that it's liberty imagery. And I get to explain that. Liberty founded in truth. What's truth? I get to answer that question. Imagery is very important. And I think we need to reclaim something too. The John Birch Society is right. It was right. It is right. That's imagery for us. I'm going to briefly talk about some of these solutions. First of all, we were able to successfully ban Sharia courts and the implementation of Sharia courts in Washington State. We were able to ban the implementation of foreign court orders in Washington State. If we could do it in Washington, we could do it all over the country, don't you think? So I want to talk about the last one. There's a few things you can get kicked out of my office for if you come to Olympia. One of them is coming in and saying, hey, Matt, I'd like to talk to you about reasonable gun control. Another one is, hey, Matt, we need more funding for Planned Parenthood. Another one is, hey, Matt, we're working with Wolfpack to do an Article 5 convention. Did you just hear what you said? You're a conservative. I think we need to go on the offense on that issue as well. And so I don't think it's a matter of, and we have successfully killed the Article 5 convention in Washington State 10 years in a row. I think it's a matter of going back and rescinding every single application just like the society wants to do across the United States of America. All right, we're going to end with Wolverine leadership. What is that? That's the John Birch Society is what that is. They've done studies on wolverines. They're phenomenal, actually. They've tracked them all over the place. Wolverines are really cool animals. They've tracked wolverines running, and they always run 3 miles an hour. Uphill, downhill, snow, sleet, mud, dry ground, 3 miles an hour. In fact, they tracked one wolverine going up 4,500 vertical feet at 3 miles an hour. That's a tired wolverine at the top. But 3 miles an hour, what does that teach us? Steady perseverance, both in our faith and our action. Steady perseverance is what 60 years looks like of being the preeminent organization in the world defending freedom and liberty. Steady perseverance. Self-sufficiency. Wolverines are also renowned for in the wintertime, they will dig down 14 feet in the snow to get to a carcass buried by an avalanche, and then they will eat the entire thing, including the bones. In fact, some languages they're translated as bone crushers. I think we need to become entrepreneurs again, and I really look forward to working with Duke Pesta on getting some young folks. And by the way, if you're under the age of 45, could you stand up right now? Yes, go ahead. 45. Below. There you go. Look at that. Okay. So young folks, we need to get back into entrepreneurship so that we have manufacturers again that are helping to fund the organization. We need to get young folks trained in media so the next generation of Bill Jaspers can do the next generation of exposing the truth. And then last but not least, we need to join, I believe, something called local activists. I know Alex Newman is already on there. There's many other activists. Tom DeWeese is already on there across the country. It is the alternative to Facebook, and it's geocentric, so you can look up who in your region is awake. It's phenomenal. Let's talk about parenthood, and this is where I want to spend a little bit of time, about 2 minutes. So Wolverines are interesting too. They've tracked Wolverine fathers, and they go around to each one of their pups and spend exactly the same amount of time. Now, are we mentoring the next generation? And I'm not just talking through Freedom Project Academy. I'm not just talking about some of the other youth things that we're doing. I'm talking about us personally. Matt, you don't know my son or daughter. Man, they went to public school. I don't know what happened. It may not be a family member. Maybe it's a friend. I will tell you one thing about the millennial generation. They want to know the truth. They just don't know where to find it yet. That's where we need to meet them. That's where we need to meet them. We need to, I believe, go into the homeschool community. We need to go into the farm communities. And we need to not just make those folks educated, those young people educated. We need to turn them into the next generation of John Birchers. I want to give you an idea of what that looks like in Spokane. 2 months ago, we were able to get gift subscriptions to the New American magazine out to 137 people in our area. 137. What did that turn into? Out of a meeting of 15 people, it turned into 8 members, and then we were able to sell out for Alex Newman and Bill Jasper 2 weeks before the event because we're on the offensive there. That is what we need to do all over the country. And so engaging in all those areas of education and art and media and all this, it's all going to bring us back to the same thing, and that is proper attitude. And that's what, over in Olympia again, when you're facing the communist, onslaught day in and day out, you're hearing just crazy stuff. I mean, you want to talk about all the gender, that's coming out of downtown Seattle in a lot of cases. When you hear all of that, proper attitude keeps you stable, and Wolverines teach us about proper attitude as well. They actually have videos of Wolverines playing fetch, like a dog. Make this kind of high-pitched squealing sound, which doesn't go with my view of what a Wolverine should sound like. But man, if you attack a Wolverine's family, it will rip your face off. How often has our Constitution been attacked? How often have our families been attacked? How often have our schools been attacked? How often has the New American been attacked? How often has it been attacked and we have not done anything? Even those of us that are here, I'm guilty of this. There have been some times where I just didn't say something. And you know what? That was wrong. If we change that and we actually look for those opportunities for confrontation and, more importantly, education, we will change the world for the better. People in Europe, people in the Ukraine that I've met, they look to the United States as the example, as the beacon of freedom. What's the beacon of freedom in the United States of America right now? The John Birch Society. So they are not just looking to America, they are looking to all of us to be that beacon for the next generation. May God bless all of you. Thank you for being here, and may God bless our allies all over the world in the fight of freedom and liberty. Thanks.